Thanks to everyone who's tuning in. We will get started right at 6 o'clock. We're just taking a few moments, letting everyone get joined on the Zoom and on Facebook. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our conversation about raging waters. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that last year, the Community Council did a community visioning exercise at the Raging Waters site, and there's been a little bit of confusion about that. At that event, we created 5 scenarios, and they were really just meant to be scenarios that got folks thinking about the possibilities at the site and just got everyone excited about this process. So the process that we'll be talking about tonight is being led by Salt Lake City Public Lands Division in collaboration with Design Workshop, who you'll hear from in just a moment. And basically the process moving forward is going to create a shared vision for the future of Raging Waters. The Community Council is very excited about this process. We're going to support the city and support Design Workshop as much as we can throughout this process. And we'd encourage everybody who's watching this event or watching the live stream or the recording afterward to get involved in the process, bring your ideas and your energy to the process. Because only when everyone gets involved are we going to get to a place where we can create an exciting future for the site. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Salt Lake City and Design Workshop to kind of talk about where we're at with the site, what this process will look like, what the restrictions are on the site, and kind of how we will move forward as a community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Riker. I am the Department Director for Salt Lake City Public Lands. That's actually a new title for me as of July 1. The council voted to make Public Lands a department. I've been with the city for approximately 6 years. And prior to that, I worked for Salt Lake County in their Recreation and Parks Department. So I've lived in Salt Lake City for almost 30 years, but originally from Washington State. So that's a little bit about me. I wanted to give you a little bit of background on where we're at with the water park. I know that you all probably know a lot of how we got to this point where we're at, where the park is 30 years old and aging, and we are right in the middle, actually, of a demolition process at the park. But back in 2020, in December, Public Lands reached out to Salt Lake City Council and asked them if we could get some funding to hire a consultant to start making plans for the Glendale Water Park with this impending demolition that was going to happen. And so we requested the funding in 2020, and we received it sometime early in 2021 or so, and we began the process of working on getting a consultant for this site. So you probably know the park is 17 acres and it's on the Jordan River. You may or may not know that it's protected under very strict regulations. It's the Federal Land and Water Conservation Funding Regulations. I usually refer to that mouthful as LWCF. And it's protected because nearly 30 years ago, when the water park was built, the city applied for and received grant funding through LWCF to develop the site. So when the functionality of the park was determined that it could no longer function with the existing equipment as a water park, our community and neighborhoods department in Salt Lake City, they had managed the park for most of those years. They began steps towards demolition. And when you demo a LWCF funded site, it has to be approved by the state, who is an agent of the federal grant program, the Federal Land and Water Conservation Grant Program, to be demolished. So they have to approve the demolish, and they don't have to approve the rebuild, but part of demolishing the park triggers a 3-year time frame in which the city is required to reopen that site, because it's land and water conservation, or at least a portion of that site, to public outdoor recreation. So because of this funding, I mean, it's really, in my opinion, it's a blessing, because the site is protected in perpetuity as a public outdoor recreation site. What that means is we can't build an indoor soccer field. It means we can't build restaurants or high rises. If there are services that are directly related to the outdoor recreation, they can have a roof and be indoor, such as restrooms and possibly even concessions, but all of that has to be approved through LWCF. So we received that approval back in April of this year, and that started a 3-year timeline for the city to get something reopened in that park. And it doesn't have to be the entire site. However, that is fully the intention of the city, is to reopen the entire site. But the LWCF guidelines just say that at least a portion of it has to reopen, which is also a blessing, because it may seem like a long time, but 3 years in construction time is a really short turnaround. So we are pressing our consultants, and we will press the construction group for whatever we build to at least try to get a portion of it, what we will probably call phase 1, open within that 3 years. So You may have participated in a public survey conducted by CAN, asking about the next steps and community interest in the site. That survey conducted by the Community and Neighborhoods Group found that there was slightly more than half of the 3,700 people who responded to that survey, slightly more than half of those folks said they would support new uses on the site. And so with that, the city did approve that funding to hire a consultant to revision, if you will, what the water park will look like. So many of the respondents asked about rebuilding specifically the water park. And I want to just address that really quickly in that, so the water park was 30 years old. And as you probably have seen if you visited the site at all, most of those components of the water park were they were very aging, and we had a consultant come out and look at it, and the city was told that it wasn't a viable option to use existing structures, that if we, it would be less expensive to tear everything out and rebuild a water park. So you may have noticed that that demolition has started. We do have an agreement with the demo group to reserve 20% of the slides for a future purpose. And we're hoping to come up with maybe some sort of artistic project, or we don't know what, but we wanted to preserve a piece of that history to keep in the park for some purpose. And that'll probably come out later. That's not really something that we probably want to go into tonight, but just so you know, there is a piece of that old park that hopefully will be back in the park in some form or another. So we also looked into what would be the cost to reconstruct the park as a similar or even smaller water park at the same site. And it was determined that the city would have to invest more than $50 million into the site just to have something there as a quote unquote viable water park that could fund itself through the revenues. And because of that price tag, unfortunately, that site as a water park isn't really fiscally possible. And it's a bummer. I spent some time there when I worked for the county. I was over all of the swimming pools at the county, and we used to have the lifeguard games there for several years, and was there, and it was really a great place. So, so unfortunately, the water park feature is not going to be an option. Right now, we only have funding for this master planning process. I have submitted a request to council for an additional $3 million in our impact fees for constructing something at the park. We don't know what yet. That's part of this process, but and then the mayor has also put forward an additional 10 million in bond funding towards this park. Now, neither of those funding sources have been approved yet. And we are actually in the middle of that capital improvement project process, which is the $3 million that we put in as an application for some construction in this park. And if you want to comment, I believe you can to the council in your support of this project. I wasn't on this meeting just to ask for that support, but you could. I believe it's, I have to look. Oh, it's August 17th. The formal meeting is open for public comment. So there's 3.2 million there, and then the mayor's put forward the 10 million in the community reinvestment bond, and that is part of the FY 22 budget, which was just passed this year. And so I anticipate that'll be moving forward, but at this time, I honestly don't know what next steps have to happen for that bond to be approved. So it's not going to be a public vote bond. So it's actually bond funding that became available after the Salt Lake City Sports Complex bond was completely paid off. So that's where that funding comes from. So that's why we've hired a planning consultant to help the community develop a master plan for the site. And really it's a master plan for the system of parks around the Glendale Water Park, or that's what we're calling it, because Raging Waters was only one of the owners. But so this plan is going to take a look at the neighboring parks. So 1700 South Park, the Glendale Park that's also has a construction project on it right now, and the Glendale Golf Course. So we have hired Design Workshop to be our consultant, overseeing the master plan for the Glendale Water Park. Design Workshop is also our current consultant on Reimagine Nature, which is our citywide public lands master plan project, as well as our Pioneer Park master plan. I have to tell you, I have goosebumps that I'm so excited to have Design Workshop on this project. It's no coincidence that they are on our 3 largest projects in the city, because they're phenomenal. And I think you will think so too. We're so lucky to have them. They put forward a project proposal that really the city likes to give opportunities to other consultants, but their proposal was so good and this project is so important that they were selected again. So we're really happy about that. Before I turn it over to Anna from Design Workshop, just a couple things that we put forward that we have asked Design Workshop to do. So they'll be analyzing the site and the surrounding context. So opportunities and constraints around this site. They will be the ones facilitating community and stakeholder engagement. They will help with community vision and goals, define the park vision. They'll be developing a conceptual site plan with alternatives for folks to look at. And then they will also develop a final site development plan and an implementation plan. What does that look like? How do we get this developed? They will look at phasing of the plan. If all this funding comes through, we could have $13 million. We don't know. It's a 17-acre site. We may want to spend more than that. Who knows? But they'll help us with some funding strategies. And then lastly, the last step is they'll help facilitate the adoption with City Council of that master plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna Laybourne from Design Workshop to introduce herself and this project.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate that introduction. And I know my background today is the most plain you'll ever see, but I do have some really colorful images to share with you. I'll share those on my screen so you can see a little bit more of what we're thinking about for this park project that's just about to lead off. Are you seeing that now? Great. I'm Anna Laybourne, principal with the landscape architecture and planning firm Design Workshop. And part of our work is creating signature regional parks throughout the country and internationally. And it's been my pleasure to be involved with other Salt Lake City projects that Kristen mentioned, the Reimagine Nature Master Plan, Pioneer Park, as well as we're working on the 7 Greenways Vision Plan currently. But it takes a talented team to pull off creation of such a complex park project as this. These are some of the other members of our team. So you'll meet Claire Hempel in a future meetings. And if you look her up, you'll see she's designed some really memorable park experiences throughout the country. and she's on the forefront of trends and innovations and write articles about this often. The future operations, maintenance, and programming of this park is integral to the park's success. So we've got a teammate, Agora Partners, that specializes in this understanding. Also on the team are some Salt Lake City team members that we love partnering with. River Restoration, they have done a number of signature ecological and river recreation projects in the region. And Eric is supremely passionate about this river and potential for this property. Similarly for Leah, she's been a useful partner for the stakeholder coordination and public outreach for Pioneer Park, and is amazingly tapped into the local communication channels. This project is especially important to her as she once lived in this neighborhood and brings a lot of ideas on how to ensure underrepresented voices are elevated. The Raging Waters property is rather different now than it was during its glory days, and seeing demolition underway has caused our team to think carefully about what physical things should remain. Even though the physical must change and the way it's used needs to shift, which Kristen mentioned, we have confidence in the potential to restore the spirit and reason it was beloved by those seeking fun and togetherness. The project has opportunities that are much, much bigger than its 17 acres. It can be an example of addressing globally significant issues such as livability, climate change, public health, and environmental justice, equity and inclusion, and provide for activities that can't be accommodated elsewhere in the city. Regional parks need to serve multiple scales, requiring creativity to create a successful regional draw, and also importantly, encourage neighborhood everyday use and support special program provider opportunities. You'll see in the project schedule that a great deal of effort will focus on the Glendale neighborhood's engagement and planning for everyday use and enjoyment. What is essential is not to squander this opportunity to make this park be more meaningful and useful to the neighborhood. We study what makes a regional park successful, and all these things from good management to reflecting the neighborhood to how it contributes to health and natural environment contribute greatly to those success factors. And I'm just going to highlight a few in some example photographs so you get the idea. One is around placemaking and art, and that placemaking often has to deal with the needs of the community and what they enjoy and those opportunities that are not captured elsewhere in the community today. It also is about a variety of park programming for all people, hours of the day, and significant events, as well as all year round and all seasons. Successful regional parks also often are a place to celebrate nature and enhance it. We'll be evaluating all these things and their performance in the design process. So really when we're putting out ideas and concepts, there's a way to evaluate how successful will that be with its outcome for performance. And this process is integrated. These four things happen simultaneously. You'll see that a bit in the project schedule. The design, public input, anticipating operations and maintenance needs, and programming are all aligned and coming along throughout the process. And what we really define this as is it's really decision-making support of how will you get to that end goal of understanding the specifics of what needs to take place here. But we want to start off with really imagining what could be. And there have been previous processes, like Turner mentioned, that have helped set the stage for that and start to collect some of those ideas. But we know we need to start back at that stage of really understanding that collection of ideas, big ideas, really imagining. Some of them will need to be kind of wild and audacious at the very beginning, because as we move along and use judgment throughout, we'll be getting down to a more narrowed focus of what can take place where and its feasibility. So I'll just take a moment to walk you through this process, but I won't get into all the details here. You can hopefully read some of those on the screen. Then we'll start off with looking at the project startup. What is the site today? What are its contents? How is that shifting with demolition? And advise on some of those directions in the near term, as well as really setting in motion the public engagement and building awareness, as well as collecting data about the site. We'll be collecting information about how to best engage with the community. The next phase, September through November, will be evaluating programs and thinking about what types of purposes could this park have in the future, and collecting that full range of options, but also starting to evaluate how those could fit within different alternative layouts for plans for the park. We'll be engaging folks and sorting out how events, programs, and partner possibilities could take place on the site. And then November through January, we anticipate that will be a heavy focus on evaluating these alternatives with the entire Salt Lake City, but as well as with very focused on neighborhood needs, as I mentioned previously. So we'll be providing some insight about how the different alternatives might perform and giving some criteria for how they might be evaluated. But really, it is also an important step to hear from the community of how would they really use the park? What are the things that excite them, make them want to be a part of this? And finally, we'll take what we've heard from the community and that insight that they've shared and the vision for that of how they would use the site and create a preferred plan and a master plan report to document this vision forward for the site. But that also includes some really practical needs, like thinking about phasing, that not all things can happen at once, and as well as how it might perform and the costs. So all of that will be within that final stage. And how you might be involved, this might be why you tuned in, of how does the city process align with all the different efforts that the city will be doing for outreach, but also what this community organization will be involved with. So at the initial launch, you can imagine it's a bit about raising awareness that this project exists and providing some education about it. It will include some interviews as well as this event in particular to get the word out. And engagement window number 2, it's about developing those alternatives. And so we're going to be doing a lot of going to people where they are at, especially those that might be underrepresented in other things like general public surveys that are online. So a number of different ways through schools and other organizations to help people envision and share their ideas for this place. That will then get evaluated and brought into different alternatives in the next round. And that's really where the broad public engagement begins in November through January, through tabling events, especially within this neighborhood. So going to public events in public places and setting up a table and engaging people, similar to what we're doing in Pioneer Park right now, as well as in-person events and online resources to do this. So we really will be encouraging and hoping for this community council and other partners to get the word out and engage others, especially in that step. It will be important that make sure we're hearing from all voices. And then lastly, and window 4 is sharing that concept plan and making sure we get those last comments from folks on reflection of any refinement that's needed. So that will be shared in a variety of ways. And I'm sure this will be one other that you'll be seeing in the future. We'll be sharing that final plan. It'll be developed between January and April, being where the final report is provided. There are many different broad interests and groups we anticipate reaching out to in that first stage, and we're getting excited about beginning to launch that and having those conversations and listening deeply to the interests and needs of your neighborhood as well as the region. So with that, I think turning it back to Turner.
Thank you. And before we get into questions for folks on Zoom, we've had a couple that have come in through Facebook, and you've answered some of them, but just to make sure that they're answered, I just want to ask them verbally just so that folks can hear those answers. One question from Pulia was, would a splash pad fit within the scope of what is possible at the site? And that might be a question for Kristen.
Yeah, thanks, Turner. I think so. Splash pads can come in a lot of different sizes and varieties. And I think having some sort of water component would really kind of reflect the history that's happened here at the park, and would be an amazing addition to this site. So absolutely.
Thank you. So the next question was from Kimberly, and she asked if you would take into account ADA accessibility during this process in the design.
again, always, we're a city, we're a municipality, and that is a requirement and a desire. We want to include everybody in this park. So we would certainly include ADA access to everything.
Thank you. The next one, and you already covered this, Anna, but I just want to put a fine point on it. What was the timeline for a final proposal? When was the ending timeline?
So we anticipate the final report is in April, but likely the final plan will be available before that. That's just when everything gets documented. So between January and April is when we'll be developing a lot of that. And I would anticipate prior to that, you'll see some graphics and things that start to give shape to that preferred that we'll be asking for feedback on.
Thank you. And then the last question, and this is probably for Kristen because it's about the use, but would a fishing pond, I'm assuming similar to what's at Fairmont Park, be possible, or would it fit within the use context of the site?
I think anything's possible. You know, I think that's a cool idea also. You know, the Fairmont fishing pond is fed with a natural spring and doesn't have as high a water table as possibly we do at the Glendale Water Park. So I don't know, you know, I'm not a geologist or understand the soil content, that kind of thing. But it's certainly something that could be looked at. And I think that's a fun idea.
Thank you. So now I'd like to turn it over to those on Zoom if you have questions, or if you're on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and like to leave a comment with a question, I can go ahead and ask that. The link to join the Zoom is also on Facebook. For those who are here on Zoom, if you would please raise your hand, I'll call on you just to make sure that it's easy to follow for folks that are watching live. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. And Lachelle, if you want to go first, I'd actually prefer if you would ask your question verbally, just so that the folks that are watching on Facebook can hear the question, and so that I'm not reading them.
Okay, thanks, Turner. I appreciate that. So I know that there are, I know that one of the mayor's agenda was to have a park similar to Liberty Park and Sugar House Park. And both of those parks have lakes, which are fantastic, but you know, people from the community just can't go to that lake and get your stand-up paddleboard and go off on the lake, or go tubing, or those types of things. I know there are communities like Daybreak that have that option, that you can do that. Because of that water kind of be taken away from us, I thought that would be kind of a nice feature to have something like that. Is that even a possibility? I know that the fishing pond came up, but I was just curious about that as well.
Yeah, I think my answer is similar in that honestly, I don't know the feasibility of putting a lake in there. The Sugar House Lake and the Liberty Park Lake are both spring fed. Well, actually, Sugar House is fed by Parley's Creek, runs through it, and then they have like a little gate valve that blocks it off. And I don't know how that would work with the Jordan River. That's something that, if that's something the community really wanted, we'd probably have to work with public utilities on what that would look like. But it would probably come from Jordan River water. And I guess one thing I would say about water is we're in a stage 2 drought and headed towards the stage 3, and I don't know that that's going to get a lot better. So whatever we do, it would be great to use existing water if we can. And if we don't use existing water, say we're using like culinary type water, we would want to put in a recirculating system so that the water is cleaned and reused. And you may or may not know this, but a lot of water parks are what they call pass through, and the water just comes in, it passes through, and it goes down into the sewer system. And that's actually a cheaper way to build, but it's not really very sustainable for us living in a desert. So the lake idea is a really cool one. Again, I think that's something that we could certainly explore and put on the list. I don't know. I have no idea the feasibility.
Kristen, partly the reason why I was like, don't demo the lazy river yet is I don't know. Maybe some things like that could be possible. We'll really be in this early stage of just understanding the ideas that are out there. And it will be about dreaming at first rather than having all the feasibility answers right away. So great ideas. I love these that are coming up.
Thank you. Paolo, if you want to go next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So before, I just want to say thank you to Kristen and Anna for kind of pushing this in the direction it's going. Really excited. My name's Paulo. I'm a recent resident in Glendale. I moved in April, and I've been kind of like following along. So this is super exciting to be a part of. I wanted to ask a question regarding the community engagement side. Within the 4 engagement windows, I saw that I think the first in-person event, and Anna, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the 3rd window starting from November to January. And I guess my question is, and I don't know if this is better tailored for Leah, but how are underrepresented groups, like what exactly is the civic engagement plan here? Because census data suggests our Glendale neighborhood 60% non-white, and that's reflected in Spanish-speaking communities and I imagine other languages. I'm pretty new and I'm getting to know my neighbors myself, and I see diversity just left and right. So I kind of want to not be a stickler about it, but I don't want to be like digging for community events popping up. I just kind of want to know so I can share with my neighbors what's happening.
Love it. Paulo, that's exactly the type of relationship and advocacy this project's going to need, is those people like you that really do want to get the word out and share it. And in September, we're going to have a number of events that are more structured around going to those that have been traditionally underrepresented and working with trusted partners already, rather than hosting a public meeting where people don't really show up don't show up to every other meeting and you don't get a lot of diversity there. We're really targeting early on that window from September to November, making sure that in addition to online surveys, there's more targeted engagement in that respect and working with those in the community that can be that bridge to others. So that's that first window begins really. After some interviews with those groups happen in the first months of July through August to understand those opportunities for engagement, be it at schools, be it at local organizations that where people really already are in this neighborhood. But then you're right, in November is when the big broad public engagement piece launches, which is where we think it will be more of that regional influence on the plan will take place. And that's when that focus widens beyond this neighborhood. Does that help and answer that concern and question?
Yeah, a little bit. Is there going to be like an online like website where people can just follow along your process as this goes along?
Yes.
Rather than relying on like council Facebook meetings and I guess for like a 24/7 access platform for people to click and okay, they're this far in the process.
Absolutely. Similar to, you'll see the Reimagine Nature citywide plan has that type of that dashboard of events and what's coming up, that citywide one. We're anticipating something like that for this project, but also email lists so that you can get updates regularly. You don't have to go hunting around for information. So I think Turner and others will be helping coordinate that of making sure we have the list of those who've been interested in this project in the past and any others that have raised attention going forward.
And
Great.
Anna, I just put our web page, until that gets designed and developed, Salt Lake City Public Lands did put together a project web page. This may change, but it's a place to offer your email address to receive those updates and to receive invitations for taking surveys and participating in focus groups. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Right. We'll go to Representative Romero next.
Thanks, Turner. And I just wanted to follow up on the past question. Anna, if you could share your list of trusted organizations when you're talking about communities of color, BIPOC communities, and some of what we call our marginalized communities with me and Senator Escamilla, since we represent this district and we reflect the majority of the district, as the previous individual who just moved into the neighborhood voiced, a lot of times our communities get neglected. So I want to make sure that if there's community organizations we're connected to, that we're giving you those connections as well, if they're not already in the city system or they're not already in your on your radar as well.
Wonderful, thank you for that. You're on our list as one of the first we'll be speaking with to vet the list of what we have today and better express that and capture more that and understand what you know about the best ways to engage people.
Well, we were able to do a lot of stuff with COVID in particular. We did our community health worker program, and so we're working with a lot of grassroots nonprofit organizations that directly serve communities of color that are from those particular communities as well. And so just let me know how I can help, and I'm willing to help in that way as well, just to make sure that all those voices are being served.
Wonderful, looking forward to it.
Thank you. Paolo, did you have more questions? I'm sorry to cut you off there.
Oh no, it's fine. No, I think my question was answered. And if I have any more, I guess I can just follow up with an email.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone else on the Zoom call that has questions? I haven't seen any new ones come in on Facebook either. But this time is yours as a community. So if you have questions, now is the chance.
I guess I have another question just to follow up. I know at one point it was mentioned that this park, because it got compared to a Liberty Park and a Sugar House Park because of the lake it has. And I think for me personally, it's exciting to know that this might have the gravitational draw of a regional park. But like, how do you guys, and you guys maybe at Design Workshop maybe already talked about this, but balancing the fact that it is just a local community park, but it's balancing the fact that it might be, you know, it has that regional draw, especially considering it's going to be on the can be built on the raging water site. I think a lot of people already have an impression that, like Kristen mentioned at the beginning of this, they're probably just thinking it's going to be another water park. But how do you balance those two kind of like ideals? And I don't want to call them extremes, but you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who just frequent the park day to day, but it might be attracting people from all over the valley. So I don't know if that question makes sense, but how do you balance those two things?
Kristen, you should add on to this, but I'll just start by saying the best regional parks, they balance both those things really well. It's not to the exclusion of anyone. It's thinking about the big events, the big draws, but also how those everyday activities take place. Because if you don't have those everyday activities, those major draws are not as meaningful, or they also have breaks in time. And so it doesn't really fit as well as when you can accomplish both. And there are many examples across the country where parks have worked to strike that balance, but it is always an adjustment over time. It's usually not right the first time you open the doors for the park, right? It's often something that over time you develop and create a better balance and think about who are your partners on the site, who might also be helping to host events or take on activities. So that's a really big challenge with regional parks, but it is absolutely possible, and something that you probably see in your existing regional parks is a constant struggle to make adjustments to get that right.
So are they asking?
I think I would just add on to what Anna said, in that I think a lot of people consider Liberty Park their neighborhood park and walk there because there are houses all around it, and which is a really great thing. For parks to be successful, they need to be activated on a regular basis. And by that, I mean, you know, Monday at 3 p.m., who's using this park? And generally, you know, regional use doesn't happen Monday at 3 p.m. It's the neighbors. And that's why it's so important that we make this park reflect what our community, surrounding community wants, so that they will use that park on a regular basis, daily, and understand what the tolerance level is for regional type amenities. I know, you know, there are all sorts of things we could put in this park that could attract people from all over Salt Lake County. And that's kind of the questions that we have for the community is what do we want here in this park? How do we want to keep it active and welcoming to everyone and meet the needs of not just the close neighbors, but, you know, the community in general, and possibly even, you know, a larger regional scale, if that's of interest to the community.
Yeah, that's great. And I think time will tell with this community engagement. One of the goals outlined in the 2014 West Side Master Plan talks about creating a desirable asset, an asset desirable to the Glendale neighborhood. So balancing potential regional assets with what the people across the street from the site are actually going to be interacting with, I think is what I'm personally excited to see and just curious about.
Thank you. I'm going to move over to Aaron, and then after Aaron, we'll have Nigel go.
Thanks. This is Jared, but Aaron just stepped out, but it's okay. I'm using his Zoom. We moved to Glendale about 3 years ago. Love it. We live just right across the street from the Peace Gardens, and it's been a beautiful location and utilize the bike path all the time. My only concern that I've noticed within the area is the number of homeless people that we have seen that have kind of started to live in the park areas. And just wondering if there's any way that in these processes, is there a way we can help the homeless community so that, you know, the parks can stay nice and clean and, you know, not having the debris that kind of comes with that, and making sure that those people are also taken care of.
Yeah, that's a great question, Nigel. And I think it's something that not only does our Parks Department face on a daily basis, but really nationally, every Parks Department faces on a daily basis. And it's a balance between, you know, helping the homeless and making them feel welcome, and also keeping the park clean and feeling welcoming. And I think we have done a pretty good job of that at Liberty Park. And Liberty Park certainly has its share of homeless, especially in the recent months. And but Liberty Park still feels safe. I hope it feels clean. I will leave that up to the constituents to judge. But it's a matter of maintenance and having the funding to maintain a park in such a way that it feels clean and it feels safe. And it also, you know, Liberty Park is busy. Everybody wants to schedule their events at Liberty Park. We have events that are grandfathered in that have been there for years and years. And it's hard sometimes for people to even book at Liberty Park. And that activates this site, and it makes it feel, you know, when you have a lot of different folks around, no one group stands out as being maybe unwelcoming or unfriendly. It feels safer when you have more people around. And I think that bringing that sort of activity, Liberty Park is a 100-acre park. This is 17 acres, so it is a bit different. But I think bringing that level of activity and having a level of maintenance at the park is so important to making it feel welcoming and safe for everyone.
I will definitely be hoping that in this process, when we're imagining ideas and dreaming of ways to solve for the interests of this park, that we will also be asking those questions and hearing from people about ways to help those experiencing homelessness. and how this park might be an avenue to that. So I hope when ideas come forward, those are some as well of how best to do that in this particular place or in other parts of the city.
Thank you very much.
Nigel, if you want to go next.
Yeah, so my question is directed to Kristen. Are there any circumstances where the use of this property could be something different? Is there a deed restriction on it, or is this purely tied to the federal funding?
So it is tied to the federal funding, and the requirement is outdoor recreation use. We have quite a few sites like this in the city that are outdoor recreation use only. It would prohibit affordable housing to go on site. It would prohibit a rec center. It would prohibit restaurants, unless the restaurant was specifically tied to the contributions of an outdoor recreation facility. So there are restrictions, they are federal, and they are monitored on a state level.
Would there be a restriction against a high school, for instance?
Yes, that would not be considered an outdoor recreation activity. So LWCF allows you to do that if you provide property of equal value somewhere else. So if we built a high school on this site, the city would have to purchase another site of equal value and provide that as open outdoor recreation.
Okay, and then I have a follow-up question for Turner. From what I've read on the initial feedback on this, the residents in this community definitely want a park. Is that your takeaway as well?
Well, I'm going to just mention that our initial community engagement was very limited, and that I will rely on the upcoming process that the city goes through with Design Workshop to determine what the community wants. As a community council, we haven't had the resources to be able to reach everybody. So with that, I'm going to give you a non-answer until the full process is done.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
With that, we'll move over to Ben.
Yeah, so my question was a little bit about, you talked a little bit about the cost, the overall cost of the park that you're allocating for around 13 million, I believe you said. Kind of addressing the question about homelessness and what that brings to parks like this. Is there accounting for maintenance costs within this proposal and this project to keep this park looking great if it's going to be a regional park?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben. And the answer is not at this time. The $3 million that we've requested through the CIP process is through impact fees, and impact fees must be spent. They're one-time funding, and they must be spent on capital projects that have a life of, I believe it's 20 years or more. And then the $10 million that we're hoping for with the community reinvestment bond is also one-time funding that has to be spent on public or community benefit. And the mayor has designated Glendale Water Park as one of her priorities for that. As far as ongoing maintenance, this will be something that council will be requested funding for once the park is built. We are hoping, and I'll let Anna go into this a little bit more, but we are hoping to have some things on site that could generate some funding to reinvest back into park maintenance.
Yeah, so part of the evaluation process in this and developing this plan will be looking at those revenue generation opportunities that still meet that needs of it being outdoor recreation, public purpose. So there are a wide variety of options for what that can look like. Kristen mentioned earlier, like a restaurant or dining, or it could be kayak rental. Some of those things may not be huge money makers, but there is a desire with regional parks for some funds to be able to go back into maintenance, but that won't be the only funds for maintenance. The other thing I wanted to highlight related to maintenance and operations is that that's part of the study, is to be able to anticipate the amount and effort of maintenance that would be needed, the types of maintenance that would be needed for the different options that we'll be exploring. Because some will certainly be much higher effort to maintain than others. And we'll be basing some of that off of your current levels of maintenance of other parks in the region, but also thinking ahead to the trends that we're seeing that may have impacts on that need for both operations and maintenance.
Thank you. Let's go over to Andrew.
Thanks, Turner. I have a budget question, and probably all of one budget question, really. The amount we've put forward, about 10 million for a bond and 3 million potentially for impact fee use. Is that an unofficial budget, or is that a starting point, Kristen? And as you get into the process of planning, where you go big and then you start to narrow it, usually because of cost or feasibility or cost mostly, where in this time frame does that decision start to happen more concretely?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andrew. Thanks. We, through our public engagement, I think we'll better understand what the community is looking for in these 17 acres. I don't have an answer for you. So we put forward what we thought we could get approved, a funding level to build something really great at this park. I don't have the answer, and I won't, of what the community wants and desires out of this park, and it really drives the cost. So if we're talking about a splash pad, that's a lot more expensive than a whole bunch of green fields. And so the $13 million is, it could be an ending point. And depending on what is wanted, for now, it's the funding that we will have available at this park. If there is a strong need or desire for additional facilities here, I think there's other opportunities for funding at this site, and that could be an application for ZAP funding. I will be applying for state grants to go along with our existing funding at this site. And there are other options for adding to this. At this time, that's the funding that we have.
May I ask a follow-up, Turner?
I guess that's a yes.
I might ask maybe a recommendation. It is notoriously hard to get public feedback. We all know that. It's even harder to get it on the west side of Salt Lake for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to throw any sort of wood on top of fire potentially here. But one of the things that's been remarkable to me is to visit other county recreation facilities. I went to one in Draper over last weekend, Bluffdale, and their newer facilities, they're funded differently. They're run by the county. It's not apples to apples. But if people don't see those and don't look at Sugar House, different government model, Liberty, if they don't see other things, I think we may not grasp what's possible and what is being offered elsewhere. And I'm concerned about that piece in our discussions about what the community wants, because it's completely valid and crucial to get neighborhood specific input and their needs met. And from a city perspective, we have community amenities from the Foothills bike trails, which are being funded right now, expansion of the trail system, which is great. Multiple parks, including a new one, Allen Park, which I put in the chat room. And I really am concerned that we may not get the full vision of what could be here. and get locked into something that based on the price. And I'm not saying price isn't important, but I'm nervous upfront about that, about us selling it short because of cost, size, timeframes, those kind of things, and not getting an equitable sort of park that would match our talks about equity in the city. So I don't know how the public process works that way, Turner or the consultant or anybody else, but it was eye-raising to me to go see a pool over at the County Rec Center in Draper and the remarkable quality difference that I've seen locally here in a county facility. So that's one of my just thoughts to put out there as we start this process.
And can I just share that a lot of those parks and that pool were funded with the Zoo Arts and Parks funding, and the city is eligible to apply for that. And our next opportunity to submit applications will come in 2025 with a vote, I believe, in 2026. And so, you know, some of those parks, yeah, they're $20-30 million parks, and they are beautiful. And I feel like I'm not saying we have to stop at 13 million. There's certainly opportunity for other funding sources to come through. There's also the Tourism, Recreation, Cultural and Convention Center, TRCC funding that comes up annually that the city can also apply for. So there are, and then there's several grants. And so that's why, you know, I think Anna said big, audacious ideas, and we want to hear it all, you know, from lakes to swimming pools to golf, not golf, mini golf is what I was thinking, or whatever it might be. You know, we want to hear it all, and then we can figure out how to phase it. When we built the last park that we opened was Three Creeks, and that was a pretty small park, and that was close to about $3 million. There was a lot of hydrology that was had to be dealt with there. Previous to that, Imperial Park, which is on like 2700 South, and I want to say 17 or 18 East. Anyway, that park was built in 2015, and it cost $1 million for a 1 acre park there in 2015. So I think the larger the park, you get more returns on your investment, and you know, you don't have to pay for all of the mobilization for every acre of park. But yeah, there are some beautiful parks, not only in our county, but across the country. And I think that's an awesome idea to show some of those pictures. Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I was going to say, you asked us, and when we create these concepts, to give a full vision, not what you will do in the next 5 years alone. That'll be part of the phasing structure, but long-term, with more money available, what else could you be doing to make this a really vibrant regional park that does rival others? And Andrew, one of the things that we'll be doing in our work is benchmarking against those comparable places, understanding what it takes for maintenance at them, what it took for the initial investment, and understanding what their regional draw is. So we'll be looking at those both within the region as well as within the nation to get a sense and help others dream for what, learning more about what's outside of your neighborhood park, and really what are those opportunities that others have explored that have made for some great places.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to move on to 2 questions we got on Facebook, and these will be our last 2 questions. But as was mentioned at the beginning, this is the beginning of the process. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for engaging both with Anna and Kristen and the city as we move forward. But the first question that came in from Facebook is, Anna, how do you incorporate public artwork into the design of a site like this? And that question came from Kimberly.
Great, that's a great question. And you know, this site, it just leaves so much scope for the imagination. And there are so many ideas to build off of, not just on the site, but within the neighborhood, within the area. You just get inspiration here. And we've already had some members of the Community Arts Council come out to the site and give some initial thoughts and impressions of what's there so we can understand what to retain as the demolition is underway. But there will be stages that the art pieces will develop. When we're at the really conceptual stages of big ideas, that will be a level to not be thinking about the details of what exactly a sculpture will be that's on site or exactly how you might interact with art, but it's kind of broader ideas. But as the design moves along, particularly as it gets to more developing into construction documents, that's when often we're reaching out to local artists and getting them very much involved with, they're the ones that are helping provide some of those thoughts and designs for art to be incorporated, as well as sometimes community members themselves participating in that creation of art.
Thank you. And then the second question was from Charlotte, and it was, how can residents participate in the capital improvement plan process? I'm going to answer that by posting a link in the chat on Zoom, and I've also posted it on Facebook. For residents that are interested in participating, there's an upcoming public hearing on the capital improvement plan submissions. Glendale has several. And so I would highly encourage Glendale residents to get involved, not only to advocate for the funding for Raging Waters, but also for a project we're calling Three Creeks Confluence West, which is the addition of some new trails and different things here in the neighborhood. So I've posted a link to the capital improvement plan or capital improvement program. The Community Council will also be sharing information on that public hearing. And then I'm going to share a list of the projects that were proposed through the capital improvement plan that our City Councilman Dennis Ferris just shared on Facebook. So that is in the chat on Zoom. And then I would also draw folks' attention to the chat on Facebook. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I just want to thank Kristen for your time tonight. Thank you, Anna, for your time. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. As we've said multiple times, this is just the beginning, and there are going to be a ton of opportunities for folks to participate as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.